Welcome to FMSP Online Revision. This session is for OCR D2 and the topic that we're going to be looking at is critical path analysis. So let's start by having a look at what we need to be able to do. So first of all, we should be able to construct and interpret activity networks using activity on arc, carry out forward and reverse passes to determine earliest and latest start and finish times, or early and late event times. We should be able to identify critical activities and find a critical path, and construct and interpret cascade charts and resource histograms and carry out resource levelling. So we've got a question here about Jamil building a summer house in his garden. And we've got all the information about duration, immediate predecessors and the number of workers. We're asked to represent the project by an activity network using activity on the arc. You should make your diagram quite large so there is room for working. We've got to carry out a forward and backward pass through the activity network showing the early and late event times at the vertices. State the minimum project completion time and list the critical activities. We're then asked to draw a resource histogram to show the number of workers required each hour when each activity begins at its earliest possible start time, and then describe how it is possible for the project to be completed in the minimum project completion time when we only have 5 workers. And then alternatively, we've got to describe how 2 workers can complete the project as quickly as possible and to find that minimum time. So let's just have a look at the table first of all. So just bear in mind this gives us all the information that we need to do the complete question, but the important thing for our network now is that we have the activities, the duration of the activity and the immediate predecessor. So this, if we exclude the number of workers, this is what we refer to as the precedence table. And sometimes you actually get given a network and you have got to draw up a precedence table. So you need to be able to do it in either order. But we're being asked to draw the network. So let's have a look. So we're told that A and B and D can all start. They have no, so they can start at the beginning. They have no immediate predecessors. So I've got our start point here and A, B and D coming out of it. So you should show those activities by directed arcs and label them A, B and D. And I think it's a good idea to put the duration in as well. We then see that activity C cannot start until activity A and B have both finished. So I need to put in a dummy network. So remember a dummy arc has a duration of 0. So now C can start, so I've got C coming out there. When C is finished and D is finished, then E can start. So notice that E cannot start until C and D have been completed. So again, I've put in a dummy arc. But of course F can start as soon as C is finished, so we've got F coming out here. So hopefully, you can see where the start of that network is, and then we just have to look at these last 4, G, H, I and J. So we'll do that. So just notice that G can start after E and F, so I've brought in F, and when E and F are completed, we have this node and we can go and start G, and then when G is completed, H, I and J can all start. So we've got those 3 arcs coming out, but we do need dummies. They all have to finish, remember, at the finish node. So I've put dummies coming from H and from J. You could have dummies going from just 2 out of those 3 anyway, so you should have 2 dummies. So your network may not look identical to that, but it should be essentially the same, and you should have 4 dummies. So what we're then asked to do is we're asked to complete a forward and backward pass. So let's start with the forward pass. So we've got arcs coming in to this node, so you've only got one arc coming in which has activity 1. So I'll start with that, duration 1, so that earliest possible start time is 1. Here we've got 2 arcs coming in, and activity A has duration 2, and activity B followed by the dummy has duration 1, so this is going to be the larger of the 2, so that is a 2. You've got 1 coming in here into this box, so that's 2 plus 2, which is 4. You've got 2 arcs coming in to this box, so we've got a 4 plus 0, which is a 4, and a 3, and you take the larger of those, so that is a 4, and then you should then be able to just work through the rest. So that's going to be a 7, this is going to be 11, 11 plus, that's going to be a 13, we've only got the 1 arc coming in, and that's going to be a 12. And here again, just make sure that it has to be the larger, and that is going to be a 13. So we've completed the forward pass. Now we start on our backward pass. So we'll start by putting 13 in there, and the reverse pass, or the backward pass, is all about arcs going out. So there's 1 arc going out there which has duration 0. So the latest possible time that this could finish is 13. Similarly here, this is 13, and this is going to be 13. We've got 3 arcs coming out, so it's 13 take away 2, so it's going to be the smallest of those, or 13 take away 1, or 13 take away 1, but it's always the smallest, so this is 11, and so forth. So again, we've got 1 arc going out, so that's just going to be 11 take away 4, which is 7, and so on. So just be careful that you do work on the basis that it's arcs going out. So you've got the 1 arc going out there, so that's 7 take away 2, which is 5, and so on. So we'll work all the way back and just check that you can complete your backward pass. And then what we've got to do is identify the critical activities and write down the completion time. So the completion time is 13 hours, so we'll put that in there. And the activities which are critical, we've got A, we've got C, we've got F is critical, 4, 4 to 7, 7 with a duration of 3, so that's critical. G is critical, and H is critical. So we'll list those: A, C, F, G, and H. Oops, that's a G. Right. So we now have our critical activities. Now, in terms of marks for that question and this part, there's 1 mark for a correct structure of your network with activities labelled with letters. So you must label them with letters. You then get another method mark if you have got your 4 dummies and the directed dummies, and an accuracy mark if your network is completely correct and all the arcs are directed. So 3 marks for the network. You get 3 marks for the forward and backward pass, 1 method mark for the forward pass, 1 method mark for the backward pass, and an accuracy mark if they are both correct. So the method marks are for substantially correct answers. You might make 1 little slip. So 3 marks for forward and backward pass, and then you get 1 mark for your critical activities and 1 mark for the completion time. So let's have a look at the next bit. This time we're asked to draw a histogram to show the number of workers required each hour when each activity begins at its earliest start. Now what I've done here is I have put in the critical activities. So it's best if we just, our critical activities A, duration 2 hours and number of workers 2. C, duration 2 hours and number of workers 2, and so on. F has 3 hours but 1 worker, and so on. So I'll just put the critical activities along the bottom, and that's generally the best way of starting. Now the other activities we can do right at the beginning are B and D. So B lasts for 2 hours, no, 1 hour and has 2 workers, and D is 3 hours with 1 worker. So I'm actually going to put D along first. So just for, it doesn't matter which you do, but I'm going to put in D here, and then B. So I don't have the benefit of a ruler, you will. So we've now got A, B, C, D. We've got E to do. Now E has got to be done after C and D, so it can't start till here. And that E has 2 workers for 2 hours. So we can put that in there. Oops. So that is that. And then what else? We've got G, F and G, H. So we just need I and J. So I and J can be done as soon as G is completed. So we'll put in I there and J there. So just remember to put them in at their earliest possible time they can start. So 2 marks for that. So 1 method mark for the axes scaled appropriately and a plausible histogram, and an accuracy mark if the histogram is correct and the axes are labelled. Okay. So in part 4 then, it says describe how it is possible for the project to be completed in the minimum project completion time when only 4 workers are available. So in other words, this B activity is a bit of a problem. But what we could do is we could move D along, so delay that for an hour, and then B could slot in there, couldn't we? So we don't need to draw the diagram. All we're asked to do is to write it down for 1 mark. So if we delay D by 1 hour, so it starts after B. Now that allows us to just use 4 workers. Okay, so just 1 mark for writing that down. And then part 5, it says describe how 2 workers can complete the project as quickly as possible, and we've got to write down that time. So there's a little bit more work to do here, but bear in mind that we've got 2 workers for A, and that starts at the beginning, and 2 workers for B. Now those could do, 1 worker could do A, and then the other worker could do B. So that would be sort of like 3 hours. So we've added an extra hour there. They then could both do C. Yep. Then 1 could do F, and then we could bring D down here, and 1 could do D. And that means then that E is going to have to slot in before we do G. So bear in mind that we're adding an extra hour in by putting B down here and delaying C a little bit. Then we're adding in an extra couple of hours to bring E down here. So, and then when it comes to this bit at the end, then 1 worker could do H and the other one could do I and J. both of them can do G. So we need to think about how we would write that down. So let's just go back to the beginning. So they could both do A, then B. Or B then A. I mean, it wouldn't matter, would it? Then you would follow it by C. So we've got A, B and C, and then one can do D. And one does F. So just notice we've delayed it by an hour here, and then C is going to be a couple of hours later, but D and F are going on concurrently, so that's okay. And then we're going to do G, and then, as I say, both of them do G. One does H and the other does I and J. So that's okay. Both do E. And then F. Sorry, G. And one does H. And the other I and J. So as I say, we have the 13 hours. We've got 1 hour because of the fact that we've put B in after A. And then we've also got another 2 hours because we're doing C after that. And then E gets pushed on by 2 hours. So we'll have a total of 16 hours. So there was 1 mark for a reasonable attempt, a method mark for a reasonable attempt at rescheduling. There was an accuracy mark for getting a correct method. And then there was 1 mark for the 16 hours here. So 3 marks in total. So I'm going to stop the session here and just remind you that, as always, it's really important that you work through lots of questions. We haven't covered every point in the specification there, so it's just a matter, as I say, of finding questions and working through them so that you're well prepared.